cruel daughter-in-law abandoned an old woman in winter. What happened next was unforgettable. She didn't scream when the door slammed behind her. She didn't cry when the snow burned her bare hands. The old woman only whispered her son's name as her knees gave out on the frozen road. Margaret Hale had survived 80 winters, but none like this. Hours earlier, the house had been warm. Not loving, not kind, but warm enough to keep her alive. She had been sitting at the small kitchen table, hands folded around a chipped mug of tea, when Emily, her daughter-in-law, finally exploded. "I can't do this anymore," Emily snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I didn't sign up to be a nurse." Margaret lowered her eyes, the way she always did. "I don't need much," she said softly. "Just a little time." Emily laughed, short, bitter, cruel. "Time? You've taken everything already." From the living room, the TV murmured a morning news segment. Upstairs, David, Margaret's son, was already gone for work, left early again, as he often did when tensions rose. He called it overtime. Margaret knew it was avoidance. Emily grabbed Margaret's coat, thin and old. "Get up." Margaret hesitated. "Emily, it's snowing." "So? You won't melt." There have been years like this. Years of quiet insults disguised as jokes. Meals served cold, or not at all. Doctor appointments forgotten. Her late husband's photo was removed from the mantel because it made the room depressing. Margaret endured it all because she believed something simple and devastating: if I am patient enough, I won't be abandoned. She was wrong. Emily drove fast, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Margaret's body slid against the seat with every turn. She tried to speak once, just once. "Where are we going?" Emily didn't answer. The car stopped on a narrow cabin road outside town, half buried under fresh snow. No houses. No stores. Just trees and silence. Emily opened the door. "Out." Margaret stared, confused. "Emily, please." "I said out." The cold hit her like a slap. Before Margaret could steady herself, the car door slammed shut. Tires spun. Snow flew. And then, nothing. The road stretched endlessly in both directions. Margaret took one step, then another, before her legs betrayed her. She fell hard, the breath knocked clean out of her chest. Above her, snowflakes drifted down, gentle and uncaring. Her vision blurred. Her thoughts wandered, to David as a boy, holding her hand crossing the street. To her husband's laugh. To the small white cat that slept at her feet every night. At least she'll be warm, Margaret thought, strangely calm. She closed her eyes. A moment later, something brushed against her cheek. A soft, desperate meow. Her cat, Snowdrop, stood in the road, fur already dusted white, eyes wide with fear. And for the first time that day, someone refused to leave her. Snowdrop turned toward the endless road, tail shaking, but instead of curling beside her owner, the cat ran. Straight into the storm. Snowdrop ran until her paws burned and her breath came out in panicked little gasps. The road was unfamiliar, wide, empty, cruel. Cars passed only occasionally, their tires hissing over slush, headlights cutting through the gray like indifferent eyes. She darted toward the shoulder, meowing loudly, desperately, but no one stopped. Doors stayed locked. Windows stayed rolled up. Humanity sped by at 40 miles an hour. Back on the frozen road, Margaret stirred. The cold was no longer sharp, it was dull now, creeping inward, wrapping her bones in sleep. She dreamed she was young again, hanging laundry in the backyard, sunlight on her arms. In the dream, someone called her name, but she couldn't answer. Inside the Hale house, Emily stood at the sink, scrubbing an already clean plate until her hands reddened. Her phone buzzed. A text from Claire, David's younger sister. "Is Mom okay?" David's not answering. Emily rolled her eyes and typed back. She's fine. Resting. A lie came easily now. Upstairs, Margaret's room sat untouched. Bed neatly made, pill bottles lined up like silent witnesses. Snowdrop's food bowl remained full. Emily noticed it and hesitated for half a second, then shoved it aside with her foot. She'll manage, Emily muttered to herself. She always does. Across town, David sat in his office staring at spreadsheets he hadn't processed for 10 minutes. His phone buzzed, missed calls from Claire. A familiar guilt pressed into his chest. He thought of his mother's quiet smile that morning. Of how thin she'd looked. I'll check on her tonight, he told himself, the same lie he'd told for months. Meanwhile, Snowdrop reached a small gas station near the edge of town. The bell on the door jingled as a man stepped out, mid-40s, tired eyes, coffee in hand. Snowdrop bolted toward him, weaving between his legs, crying loudly. Hey, the man laughed, stepping back. Where'd you come from? Snowdrop ran a few feet, then turned back, looking at him. She did it again. And again. The man frowned. You're trying to show me something, aren't you? Snowdrop darted toward the road. Inside the station, the cashier shook her head. Probably just hungry. But the man hesitated. He remembered his own mother, how she'd fallen once, alone, because no one had listened when something felt wrong. He set the coffee down. All right, he said quietly. I'm coming. Back on the Cavan Road, Margaret's breathing slowed. Snow piled gently on her coat, disguising her like part of the landscape. The world felt far away now, safe, distant. And then, faintly. A sound. An engine slowing. As headlights cut through the storm and Snowdrop's cries grew louder, the truth was racing toward Emily, whether she was ready for it or not. The car slowed to a crawl as the man followed Snowdrop's frantic trail back toward the deserted road. His headlights swept across snowbanks and frozen trees. Until they caught something unnatural in the white. A body. He slammed the brakes. Oh my God, he whispered, jumping out into the cold. Margaret lay half buried in snow, her face pale, lips tinged blue. Snowdrop circled her, crying louder now, pawing at the man's legs as if begging him to hurry. Hang on, ma'am. Please hang on. He shrugged off his jacket, wrapping it around Margaret's shoulders, feeling how frighteningly light she was. Her pulse was faint, but there. Alive. He called 911 with shaking fingers, his voice breaking as he explained the location. While they waited, he rubbed her hands, breathed warm air into them, spoke gently, even though she couldn't hear him. You're not alone, he said. You're safe now. Sirens eventually pierced the storm. Paramedics worked fast, loading Margaret into the ambulance. Snowdrop leapt inside before anyone could stop her, curling protectively against her owner's chest. At the hospital, nurses moved Margaret into intensive care. Doctors shook their heads, murmuring about hypothermia, dehydration, neglect. Neglect. That word echoed louder than any alarm. Across town, David finally answered Claire's 10th call. She's gone, Emily said loudly in the background, snatching the phone. Probably wandered off. You know how old people get. There was a pause on the line. What do you mean gone? David asked slowly. Emily's confidence faltered. I mean. She's not here. Don't overreact. But David was already grabbing his coat. When the hospital called an hour later, Emily felt something unfamiliar twist in her stomach. Fear. David arrived just in time to see his mother unconscious, wires attached to her fragile body, Snowdrop sleeping beside her neck like a guardian spirit. The doctor's voice was calm, but cutting. If she'd been out there another hour, he said, she wouldn't have made it. David turned to Emily, eyes red, jaw trembling. Where was she? He asked. Emily opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The investigation didn't take long. Cameras from the gas station. Tire tracks. The man's statement. Snowdrop's trail. Truth, once uncovered, moves quickly. Emily was asked to leave the house that night. Margaret survived, but something in David did not. His denial shattered. His silence ended. Weeks later, Margaret was moved into a warm assisted living home, filled with light, care, and people who spoke kindly to her. Snowdrop remained by her side, celebrated as a hero. Emily, meanwhile, sat alone in a small rented apartment, calls unanswered, reputation destroyed. Friends vanished. The family turned cold. Winter returned the following year. Her car broke down on a lonely road during a snowstorm. No signal. No heat. As snow began to fall harder, Emily hugged her coat tight, and for the first time, truly understood terror. As Emily's hands began to numb in the cold, a horrifying realization struck her. This road felt hauntingly familiar. Emily's phone died 5 minutes after the car did. At first, she stayed inside the vehicle, engine silent, hazard lights blinking weakly like a fading heartbeat. She told herself this was temporary. Someone would come. Someone always did. That belief had carried her through life, through cruelty spoken easily, through doors slammed without consequence. But minutes stretched. Snow thickened. The road emptied. The heater gave one last breath and went cold. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, teeth chattering. Her boots were thin, fashion over function. Her coat, expensive but useless against real winter. Panic began its slow crawl up her spine. This is different, she told herself. I'm not helpless. Yet the silence argued otherwise. She stepped out of the car, immediately sinking ankle-deep into snow. Wind cut across her face, stealing her breath. She looked down the road in both directions. No lights, no movement, no mercy. A memory surfaced, unwanted and sharp. Margaret, standing uncertainly by the door. Margaret's voice, Emily. It's snowing. Emily shook her head as if to dislodge the thought. Stop, she muttered. This isn't the same. But the cold didn't care. Her hands began to sting, then ache, then fade into numbness. She tried walking, but the road stretched endlessly, each step heavier than the last. Fear, real fear, settled in her chest, thick and suffocating. She fell once. Then again. Lying there, snow collecting on her sleeves, Emily laughed weakly. This is ridiculous, she said to no one. Someone will help. But minutes passed. And no one did. Her thoughts slowed, drifting into excuses she'd used for years. I was stressed. I was overwhelmed. She was old anyway. Each justification sounded thinner now, fragile as ice. Then came the most frightening thought of all. What if no one comes? Emily pulled herself upright and screamed, once, twice, until her throat burned. The sound disappeared into the storm. She thought of Margaret again. How quiet she'd been. How she never screamed. A pair of headlights finally appeared in the distance. Emily waved wildly, stumbling toward the road, hope exploding in her chest. The car slowed, but didn't stop. It swerved around her and disappeared, tires spraying snow. Emily collapsed to her knees. Tears froze on her cheeks. Hours later, or maybe minutes, time had lost meaning. A truck approached slowly. The driver stopped this time, cautious, suspicious. You all right? He called out, not getting too close. Emily tried to answer. Her lips barely moved. The driver frowned, then stepped back. I'll call it in, he said. Can't take you. Company policy. He drove off. Emily stared after him, shock hollowing her out. Company policy. The snow fell heavier. Somewhere far away, in a warm room filled with light, Margaret Hale slept peacefully, Snowdrop curled against her chest. And on the road where cruelty had once been delivered without remorse, Emily finally understood what abandonment truly meant. As Emily's vision blurred and the world began to fade, fate prepared one final decision. Would this road take its second victim, or demand a living apology? Snow fell again the following winter, but this time it did not bring fear. Margaret Hale sat by a wide window in her assisted living apartment, a knitted blanket across her knees, sunlight breaking through the clouds and turning the snow outside into something almost beautiful. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a teacup, but they were warm. It's always warm now. Snowdrop slept beside her, older, slower, yet still faithful, one ear twitching each time Margaret shifted. The nurses often joked that the cat had appointed herself head of security. Margaret smiled, but her thoughts drifted. Pain does not disappear simply because safety arrives. Some memories linger quietly, like scars beneath clothing. Yet she had learned something in the months since the road, that survival was not just about being saved, but about choosing not to let bitterness finish what cruelty started. She had forgiven Emily. Not in person. Not aloud. But truly. And forgiveness, she had learned, was lighter than hatred. Across town, Emily stepped out of a shelter kitchen, pulling her coat tighter as snow brushed her hair. She no longer dressed for attention. She dressed for the weather. For reality. Inside the shelter, an elderly woman sat alone, hands shaking as she tried to tie her scarf. Emily knelt without being asked. "Here," she said softly. "Let me help." The woman looked at her, suspicious at first, then grateful. "Thank you," she whispered. Emily swallowed. "You're welcome." No one at the shelter knew her past. No one praised her. And that was exactly how she needed it. Each meal served, each blanket folded, each quiet act of care was not repayment, but remembrance. Some nights, Emily dreamed of the road. But now, she always woke before the cold took her. David visited his mother every Sunday. He never rushed anymore. Never avoided hard conversations. The guilt stayed, but it had taught him presence, and presence had become love. One afternoon, Margaret asked him to open the window just a little. "I want to feel the winter," she said. David hesitated. "Are you sure?" Margaret nodded, smiling. "Yes. I'm not afraid of it anymore." Snowflakes drifted in, gentle, harmless. The world had not become kinder. But some hearts had. And somewhere between cruelty and consequence, abandonment and mercy, the snow had delivered its final lesson. Those who harden their hearts will one day feel the cold they created. But those who choose compassion, even after suffering, will always find warmth again. Cruelty leaves people behind. Kindness returns, even when it walks on four small, white paws.